Lying between the Cheviot Hills and the Scottish border, in the extreme north of Northumberland, lie the Ford and Etal estates. In an area with one of the lowest densities of population anywhere in England, it extends to 6,000 hectares or 15,000 acres, located in and around the two villages of Ford and Etal. Lying as it does close to the Scottish border, the area is rich in history, dating back to Bronze Age times. The two villages have their own stories to tell. The castle at Ford was first built in the 12th century. It played a prominent part in the Battle of Flodden Battlefield in 1513, in which the English inflicted a bloody defeat on the Scots, and in which King James IV of Scotland himself died, the last British monarch to be killed in battle. Etal Castle dates back from the 14th century and fell into ruin soon after Flodden. The times of conflict slowly and finally gave way to peace and stability, culminating in the Union of England and Scotland in 1707. Significant improvements were made to both Ford Castle and the surrounding farms during the late 18th century under the Delaval family, and again in the 19th century when Ford was owned by the Marquess of Waterford from Ireland. Only in the early years of the 20th century did the two estates become united under one ownership, when the first Lord Joycey, a successful owner of coal mines in Durham, purchased first Ford in 1907, then Etal in 1908. The estates are still in the ownership of the Joycey family.
4 generations on, my role I think is probably a little bit different. We've seen all the technological changes that have occurred. We've seen society change hugely in that period. I still think though that the countryside lives by stewardship. I am fortunate enough to be in that role. It's a role that I enjoy, it's a role that I hope I can contribute something to. But I do think that it won't be, or the countryside will be here long after I've gone, and still it will require nurturing, stewarding and managing.
Farming and the farming trades are still the main occupation throughout all of North Northumberland and the Scottish borders. Today, there are 35 farms on the Ford and Etal estates, most of them rented out to tenant farmers, whose businesses revolve around growing traditional crops such as barley for the beer and whisky industry, wheat for animal feed and biscuit flour, and oilseed rape for oils to be included in animal feeds and for industrial uses, as well as raising livestock, principally sheep and cattle, for meat production. The farmsteads often reveal evidence of the great agricultural improvements made in North Northumberland in the late 18th century, as well as later developments. In those days, before transport became so well developed, there was a need for farm produce to be treated or processed in the area in which it was grown. Thus, there has been a corn mill at Heatherslaw on its present site since the 13th century, although the current building dates from the 19th century. A forge on the opposite bank produced hand tools such as spades, shovels and rakes. Horses needed to be shod by the blacksmith, and horse-drawn implements needed repair and maintenance. Nowadays, and fittingly perhaps, the Heatherslaw Light Railway occupies part of this site. The larger houses, not just the castle or the manor, but the vicarages and the bigger farmhouses, had domestic staff to do the work that is nowadays done by washing machines, microwave ovens and dishwashers. There were gardeners, grooms, carpenters and farm workers, and almost everyone in the village not only lived, but also worked alongside each other on the estates. Times have changed. The countryside, like everything else in modern life, has to adapt to technological advances in farming and machinery as much as to changes in our daily lives. Would King James IV have been able to imagine a modern tractor ploughing the fields on which his army was encamped? Could the Victorians ever have foretold the arrival of telecommunications masts, and requests from communications companies for somewhere to site them.